Hello. Well, the people were eating manna, doing okay, but then they started getting thirsty again. But the cloud moved them on. And so they did what the Lord wanted, or what Moses told them to do, is keep following that cloud by day. And they did, and it led them to a place called Rephidim, Rephidim. I don't know, Rephidim. And they were so thirsty, and I think I would be complaining too. I'm sorry, I'd probably be one of the crowd. And Moses was getting so upset with his people, this whole thing, he just so upset with the whole crowd that he went out and he had some of his men, and they're looking all over, kicking over every stone to see if there's any moisture anywhere, water. And you know what? He didn't even think to ask the Lord for it. He was just upset looking for water. Well, they didn't find any water, and Moses was awful thirsty himself, and imagine how all the animals were that take a lot of water. And then finally God spoke and said, Moses, I'm here. He said, Moses, if you go over to this mountain over here, see that huge boulder, big boulder? He said, I want you to go and speak to that boulder, to that rock. And Moses did. He, for an old man, he got right up there in a pretty quick hurry. And, but he was so thirsty and upset and tired, disgruntled with his people. And so instead of speaking to the rock, he hit it with the same staff that he used in Egypt. He just hit it with a bad attitude. All right, I'll do what you say, Lord. That's not a good attitude at all. Well, immediately the rock split in half, and this big fountain of underground water came spewing out of the rock, and it ran down the hillside, and there was a valley below, and it formed a huge lake. It kept running and running, just water like crazy, good, sweet, cold water. And God took Moses aside while they were drinking, and he said, remember, Moses, I had told you just to speak to the rock, not to hit it. And we learn in the scriptures later on in the New Testament, it says it's because that rock was Jesus Christ. Remember, Jesus had been through him. He's been in that OWR, that big pillar of fire. And Moses had basically disregarded all of that, and he hit the rock. He was so upset. That wasn't a good idea. And so the people were drinking, and Moses noticed some really rough, rugged-looking, a whole bunch of men, really ugly-looking brutes, and they came in and they started to pillage into the camp of the Israelites and taking everything, just trying to strip them clean of everything. And there was an outright war going, fighting like crazy. This really just, Moses couldn't, he's almost at his wit's end. And the Lord told Moses, he said, I want you to go up on that hill over there, and I want you to go above the camp, and I want you to raise that staff, the same one that you rose up in Egypt, and the same one that turned into the snake and stuff. So Moses did that, and he was high on a hill, and he rose his staff way up above. And when he did, those rough and ugly brutes started to leave, and they went back, but his arms were getting so tired. But when he put his arms down, here comes the man again. So by this time, Joshua, a man named Joshua, and a man by the name of Hur, H-U-R, they came up and were trying to help Moses a little bit by holding, they put the staff up again and they go away again. Put it down, they come back. And finally Moses was just, I told you he's an old man by now. He's just so tired that the two men went over and got a big boulder and they rolled it over so Moses could have someplace to at least sit on it. So he sat on that and was holding up. But then also Joshua and Hur, they each took his arms and were holding his elbows up on each side so he could continue to hold it. And he was able to hold it long enough that drove God's power, drove the Amalekites away, way away. And they never came back. And so Moses finally put it down, and they had won the war, but God kind of let him know that when God says even the smallest word in your heart, obey it. And Moses hadn't. He lost his temper and he hit the rock. Because remember Jesus Christ, it says he was that rock. He was in the pillar of fire. He was the one leading with the Lord, with God. And he said, I and my Father are one. And so that's what happened. And that's what happens to us when we think, oh, God's not going to mind, or we lose our temper and we think we can get away with something. And somehow things turn kind of bad that way because we're not listening closely to what God is telling us in our heart. And that's what happened to Moses and the Israelites, because God had lost kind of temporary interest in even wanting to talk to anybody, including God. He was sick of it. So don't ever give up. Keep close to God. And I'm going to leave it there for right now. Bye-bye.